Hello and welcome to tonight's program. We've got maybe one of the most exciting programs ever here tonight. We've got some Highlander Warriors. Hello and welcome to our program.
How you doing, Rusty?
Very, very good.
This evening.
Yeah, this is Richard Brown, the chief, and we have a friend of his. You're going to have actually a battle later on in the show.
Yeah, Mr. Teague Seaton. We've been doing sword for years, and we have a routine that I think you can enjoy.
I think so too, looking at these weapons as we prepared for the show. So this is King's Connection, Jewels of the Crown series. So let's just start right off. We have about a half an hour. Tell us about originally where the Highlanders began and when.
Well, years ago, a good friend of mine and I, we went to Renaissance fairs, and we saw some of the so-called battle reenactments that they were having, and we weren't too pleased with what we saw, so we decided that we'd get together and do a routine and show them how it should be done.
Right. Now, probably part of this is in your heritage, because I can tell you're not Asian and you're not, you know, from Africa or anything like that. I bet this is in your culture. Originally, your family?
I'm mainly Scots-Irish.
Scots-Irish.
Yes.
So that's originally what the Highlanders were?
Well, the Scots-Irish came from Scotland first and then into Northern Ireland. They weren't Irish, but they lived in Ireland.
Right.
They were Scottish.
Right.
But most of my families come from the Highlands, the Borders, and from Northern Ireland.
Okay, and what year would they have originated? Did they migrate there as warriors from some other part of Europe, or how did they get there?
Well, the Celtic peoples migrated. The Celtic hinterland was in Austria, actually.
Is that right?
And that's where the Scots and the Irish originally come from.
Okay.
And it was a place called, Hallstatt.
Right.
And they migrated out of there.
Yeah.
And went into the northern reaches of Europe.
Okay.
And
historically, what timeline would that have been? Do you have any idea in general?
You're talking
within 100 years?
You're talking like hundreds of years before Christ.
Okay.
The Celtic peoples migrated out.
Right. Now, did they migrate in to conquer whoever was already there?
Oh, yeah.
Or they did it?
That was
in
always
your culture,
conquer
isn't
and divide. It was always conquer and divide.
Yeah.
You had your Dalriadan Scots that were in Ireland that came over to a place called Alba. It wasn't Scotland yet.
Okay.
And they set up camp on the Western Isles.
Is that right?
Around Argyll.
Okay. When we first talked, I mentioned that it seemed to me, I wondered, what are you fighting? And then you said, well, it was a fighting culture. That was part of the people.
It's an absolute warrior culture, yes. But that was most cultures back then.
Right.
Everybody comes from a warrior culture at one point.
Right.
The Scots just did it better than most, I think.
Well, okay. That's probably true. That's why we remember them so well.
Oh, yeah.
Now, historically, your family tree and family name was Campbell? Is that right?
I have several Scottish names that I know of that I can trace to, and one of them is, the predominant is Campbell, closest to my bloodline now. My grandmother was a Campbell.
Is that right? Do you have any idea when your people might have ended up in America? I know you're probably tracing your lineage back.
I believe my families came over to Newcastle, Delaware, around the mid-1700s.
Okay.
And,
is there a thing now called DNA testing that it seems like someone was mentioning it to me that you're able to do that now?
Absolutely. It goes from father to son if you're going to do the Y-DNA.
Okay.
You can trace that thousands of years back, and they can tell you where you came from at a certain time.
Wow. That's pretty exciting stuff. Now, I'm French. Did you guys ever fight my people along the way?
Oh, are you kidding? No.
Did you?
Actually, there was
the
old alliance between Scotland and France.
Is that right?
And they went up against the English.
Good for us then.
Yeah, because they were both Catholics.
Right.
Both Catholic countries at the time.
Right. I know after World War II, France didn't get a good moniker as warriors, but people don't realize the name of the country France came from the Francisca, which was a battle axe. That's actually how it was named.
And it was the Franks.
Yes.
Yes, the Germanic tribe.
Yes. Well. Let's talk weapons then, as long as we're talking about warriors and history and fighting.
I'd be glad to.
You want to point out a couple things or any?
Well, let's see. Let's go with the axe first.
Okay.
The axe was a favorite throughout history with Vikings.
Right.
And, it was actually Robert the Bruce's favorite weapon.
And he would be?
Robert the Bruce was king of Scotland at one point.
Okay.
And at the Battle of Bannockburn,
yes,
which was about 1314.
Right.
They opened up with a English knight wanting to settle the score right away. His name was de Bowman.
Okay.
And he charged Robert the Bruce. And Robert the Bruce took his horse and stepped aside and slammed him as he went by.
With this type of weapon?
With an axe.
Is that right?
Killed
That's
him
decisive,
outright.
you think?
And that's how the battle opened. And he turned to his men.
Oh my gosh.
He turned to his men and he says,
yeah,
I broke my favorite axe. And that's how it started.
Lead by example. Yeah. Now we have a friend of yours here, Teague Seaton, who's going to help us out. Any of the weapons that you can't reach. And this is the fella that you guys are going to be giving a demonstration later on.
Yes,
right?
we'll give a little demonstration at the end.
Okay. What else should we see next, do you think?
Teague, if you could get me the Basket Hill Claymore. Talk about that.
Claymore. This is Teague Seaton, who will be with us later on doing a demonstration, and I saw him practicing this. It's something you've got to see.
Thank you. Now this weapon was a favorite of the Highlanders, and it's called a Basket Hill Claymore.
And this is because?
The blade itself. Now you had bigger claymores, like the one behind you right there.
Oh, I see.
But when the fighting styles changed and they started breaking them down and putting these baskets on them.
Okay.
And it still is called a claymore.
Right.
But it's a Basket Hill Claymore now.
Is that, and would this have been an original maker of the weapon where they got the name Claymore? Does that
Claymore meant great sword in Gaelic.
Is that it?
Now, it wasn't a maker. It meant great sword in Gaelic.
That's why I ask, and you're the go-to guy for these answers, because I would have thought it was a family name, like Solingen or something like that.
No.
Okay.
But they did have whole families that made weaponry and were armors.
And they actually still use Claymore mines, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. That's where it came from. That's where the name came from.
I'm learning a lot right now, because I never put that together.
But they had the whole families that were pipers as well. And,
okay. Yeah.
And bards and teachers and the whole bit.
And a bard is?
A bard is somebody who had the family histories and told about the stories of the tribes.
I see. Yeah. Very exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is another version of the Claymore?
And that is actually the original version, and then it got down to the Basket Hill Claymore.
So this is more refined along the way historically.
I don't know if you call it refined. It was just a different style of fighting. Well, the claymores, the big claymores that they used were for the shock troops, really. You had your galaglas.
Which is?
They were mercenaries.
Okay. And where would they have been hired from?
They were hired from Scotland and the Highlands.
Okay.
The whole families were galaglas.
Oh, is that right?
You had Campbell families that were galaglas. You had MacDonald families that were galaglas.
And they were paid mercenaries, so they would fight for whatever cause.
Absolutely. That's where the money was.
Yeah. Now, when I suggested more refined, I meant actually the artwork on it. You know, a little more
well, it's more decorative, of course. The filigree and stuff and all this is really, I mean, this doesn't really do justice to some of the original works.
Is that right?
No, not at all. These are replicas.
Okay.
The original works were actually, they would glide in your hand. They were made by metallurgists to, I mean, in those days, the metallurgist was looked at as almost like a sorcerer or something because he could make a sword do magic.
Right.
And,
right. I bet that's true.
The clans turned to them in times of war.
Anything else you want to show us back here?
Teague, could you hand me that Lochaber?
Now, what's this called?
This is a Lochaber axe, and it was a favorite of the yeoman.
Okay, now if I showed up on the field and someone had this, particularly you guys, there would be no battle.
Well, if you got that scared, I don't think there would be. and this would scare
is
you.
Very effective. Tell us how it's used.
This originally was used as a farming implement.
Is that right?
And they would step on this part here, jutting out, and turn the soil.
Okay.
Now, when the armies came through and the farmers were in the fields, they'd say to them, well, you're coming with us. You got no choice. You're going.
Right.
You're going to fight.
Okay.
And they'd take what they had.
Sure.
Which was their farming implement.
I see now. So that far back they had what would be being drafted or conscription, they called it. Yeah. Interesting.
And they found that farming implement was very good on the battlefield because you could take a knight off his horse with this part and then just turn your blade on it.
Wow.
And he was done.
And they would have used it, you know, thousands of hours already, so they really didn't have to practice.
And then they refined it a little bit, put more of a blade on it and a hook.
Okay.
So it made it very easy pull somebody off their horse and
I
mid-stride.
I bet. Yeah. And quite a distance you could get with it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
They became quite adept at this.
I see. Now, what will you guys be using tonight? Which do you think?
We'll be using hand and a halves. And these are replica swords.
Okay.
Could you hand me that one? Thank you.
This is exciting stuff. You know, I'm sure you can see this at home. You can tell this has weight to it, and it's been used. You guys do this a lot.
It's a little jagged, actually.
Yeah.
Ground it down.
I bet the sound that emanates from it is exciting enough.
Yes, these actually are slayers, and they're replicas that we get out of Baltimore. But they're very...
a slayer is a brand? Or
yes. These are very, very... the weight is good from the pummel to the tip.
Okay.
And that's one of the main reasons you get it. It kind of glides in your hand. If you let the pummel and the sword work itself,
right,
you don't have to work that hard.
It's got a counterweight, perhaps, here to balance it.
Right here.
Wow. And what is this called, style-wise?
This is a hand and a half, and this was a favorite of warriors for centuries because you could use it with 2 hands or 1 hand.
I see.
And you could have a shield in this hand and use it, or use it with 2 hands. We'll probably be using it with 2 hands tonight, both of us. Yeah. That's
pretty exciting stuff. Now, how about some of the smaller handheld stuff, maybe this or... well, we're going to see this again later. I'll remind you that at the end of our little talk here, they're actually going to give a demonstration. I saw them practicing this, and it's something you don't want to miss, really.
Thank you. This is a Morningstar flail.
Morningstar, that's a nice little name.
Yeah, you know, have you seen those commercials with what's in your wallet, where the guy's on the plane and he's walking around bopping people in the head with?
Okay.
I crack up every time I see that. But these are very effective, used by the right person, the right warrior. If you had a shield...
Used by the right warrior.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you had a shield as this one, and you could get past this part over to your opponent's arm, you could take his arm out.
Oh my gosh.
And once that was done, that arm became useless.
Right.
He had a sword arm still, but if you could wing this thing, if I could demonstrate it, I'd show you what I mean, but I can't do that right here. I might hurt you.
I don't think there's a volunteer in the house.
But you could do some very big damage with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And all these would have been handmade in the villages, or?
Well, the steel came from different places, mainly Germany and Spain.
Right. Okay.
And but they made the furniture. What I mean by the furniture is the guards.
Yes.
And everything to the weapons themselves.
Okay. Wow. Now, typically, would a warrior have his favorite and he stuck with his favorite? Or would there be different instances where he would use something?
I'm sure that they were adept at several weapons, but if he had a favorite sword, he'd name his sword.
Is that right?
Yes. I mean, they had swords that were called leg biter and things like that.
Okay.
They absolutely loved their weapons.
Right.
Yes. Because, I mean, that's the thing that kept them alive.
Yeah. Any particular historic battle you want to tell us about that?
Well, there's many battles that we can talk about. The Wars of Independence with Robert the Bruce and William Wallace.
Right. William Wallace is a name I think everyone would know. Would this be the Braveheart?
Well, it's kind of funny. A lot of people didn't even know who William Wallace was until a Wallace, a descendant of Wallace, went to Scotland and wrote a book about him called Braveheart.
Is that right?
That's right.
So that's the...
He was standing in front of the gate at Edinburgh, and the caretaker came out there, and he was asking him. He says, "I know this statue. This is Robert the Bruce, but who's this guy?"
Right.
And he said, "Well, that's the greatest hero of all Scotland." Well, then why haven't I heard of him?
Right.
Because he was not a noble. He was more. He was more a. I guess what you would call middle class or something like that. But Robert the Bruce was a noble.
I see. So he already had his lineage and heritage, but the other fellow actually fought his way up from the bottom up.
Well,
to be
actually,
remembered.
people in Scotland know who he is.
Right.
And they always have. Everything's named after him. You got wells named after him. You've got rocks named after him. And this and that. But he just wasn't brought to the fore until this actual Wallace, his last name was Wallace, wrote the book about him.
Is that right?
Yeah. He was an unsung hero.
Okay. Hey, the pipe and drums, how did this play into battle and war? Are they still considered weapons of war?
The pipes now are more for ceremony and that kind of thing,
Okay.
but at one time, a clan had its pipers.
Yes.
And that piper could signal to you if it was time to go into battle or time to back up a little bit
Right.
by what he was playing.
Right.
He played a language that chief understood.
Yeah.
And
this you
very,
said was-
very honored tradition.
Right. It was the piper who did that?
The piper
Okay,
himself.
and I asked because right up in the Americas to the Civil War, during the American Civil War, there were 28 different drum rhythms which told them what to do in battle.
Exactly. Same
So, wow.
But the piper would pipe in the heat of the battle,
Okay,
and he could be shot and keep going.
sure. And that
He'd
sound
still
would
keep
carry
piping.
across through the den of battle, huh?
Well, it got their blood up.
Right.
To the Highlander, when he heard the pipes,
Yes.
it was time to go to war.
Right.
And if a certain tune was playing,
Yeah,
it even got him worse. It got him
Wow.
really bloodlust.
I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
Hey, let's bring it closer up to date now. You guys are going to do a demonstration for us, but there are demonstrations throughout the year, different places in Northern California. Maybe people could see this.
Oh, there's stuff going on all year long.
Anything coming up, maybe at the end of the year here, beginning of next year?
We've got the Parade of Lights coming up in the Niles district of Fremont,
Okay.
and that's the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And
Parade of Lights.
on the main street of Niles.
Sure, and that's where we're from, because that's where I met
Yeah.
you. That's where I grew up. That's
Yeah.
where you live.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's the closest I've ever had to a hometown. My father was in
Right.
the military, but we all
Right.
always came back there.
Yeah, and that's probably our original warrior culture started with our fathers. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
They were the professional
Marine Corps.
warriors. You were saying well, your father was in the Marine Corps and in
Oh, yeah.
Vietnam and everything. I know my father was in the war with Patton, and he was originally World War II and Korea. So will you guys be demonstrating there also, or is it totally a Highlanders Day, or
No,
what's going on?
it's a parade of all different groups, but
Okay.
we are always participating in that, and we
Right.
do the sword out there while we're doing
Great.
the parade.
Great.
And the people in Niles really get us going. They love it. Fight, fight! You know. So
I
we
bet. Yeah, I know when you guys were practicing for tonight's performance and you went out front, you said that sometimes the police are even called when they see people battling with swords. And
Oh yeah, there's been a few times that the police have come down. When I first started practicing at the Niles years ago,
right,
at that little Vallejo Mills Park there,
yes,
the police came out and they said they looked quite nervous.
right,
And they said, "What are you guys doing?" We said, "Hey, don't worry, we're
Right,
just
right.
practicing here, guys. Don't worry about it." You know. And after that, they were pretty cool, but they come out every
That's
once in a while
good.
to check us out. We get
Sure.
along pretty well with them. We got a pretty good relationship.
well,
with
sure.
them.
Once they know what's going on,
Yeah,
everything's
they're,
you know, on
they're
the
pretty
up
good
and up.
guys.
Yeah. Now, do you traditionally change outfits? I mean, you have favorite ones. Does the plaid represent certain clans?
The plaid actually represents clans more today than it ever has.
Okay.
There was a time when you wore what you wanted to wear.
Right.
You wore your whatever tartan you wanted to wear.
Right.
It's
Okay.
a myth that they all had a set tartan. That came
That's
after
why I'm
Culloden.
asking, because it's a myth that I had heard. I didn't know it was a myth even.
Yes.
And you can clear that up for us.
Well, it came. It was more prevalent after Culloden, which
Yeah.
was the last battle on British soil
Right.
of Highlanders,
Okay.
and that was in 1746.
Wow. Wow.
Now, when that happened, they banned the bagpipes, they banned the tartan.
Is that they banned it?
You could not wear your national garb
Right.
on penalty of death.
Was this England controlling?
England controlling Scotland.
Okay. On the penalty of death.
Mm.
Is that right? See, this is things people don't know.
And it didn't become popular again until Victoria and Sir Walter Scott made
Okay.
it popular again.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden they were saying, okay, this tartan belonged to so-and-so.
Yes.
And today, after 200 and something years, yes,
Wow.
it is a set tartan
Wow.
that they do recognize.
Right. See, that's interesting historically. Now, tell us about maybe other upcoming events so people can actually relive this.
Well, we have Dunsmuir. We have Tartan Day. That would be around April the 10th,
Okay.
2010.
Okay.
And we'd like to see everybody out there.
Tartan Day is where now?
Tartan Days at Ardenwood Farms in Fremont.
Okay, that's right
It's
on
a
Jarvis,
beautiful
I
venue,
believe. Yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
area. There's a house there where they do tours and all
Sure.
that. But
Okay.
once a year we get out there and we hear the bagpipes skirling.
Wow, I'm excited already.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of
Wow,
fun.
you might need a drummer there.
There's dancers.
Is
There's
that right?
traditional food. and
Okay. Tell us real quick the difference so people understand between, say, a Scottish Highlander and Celtic in general.
Scottish Highlanders are a derivative of the Celts.
Okay.
Just like the Irish.
Right.
And they spoke a common language.
Right.
And had common styles in their metal work and that kind of thing. And that's they derive from the Celtic peoples, the ones that I talked about coming from Austria.
Okay.
But there are also Celts that wound up in Cornwall and in Galicia in Spain.
Yes.
Where they still play the bagpipes, by the way, in northern
Spain.
Yes.
Yes.
There were huge colonies in Spain and in Portugal.
Okay.
As far as Hungary.
Okay.
And they weren't just in Scotland and Ireland.
And everyone thinks they were. I thought they were.
There were
That's
Celts that went
here.
over the Alps and went into the Po Valley in Italy.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to do another show, I know already, because I knew we couldn't cover it all. I mean, this is amazing stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And this is part of my Warrior series. You know, I did a musical series before, but now we're doing a new episode.
Well, we're not going to do any river dancing for you tonight. I'm sorry.
I've actually played drums for that professionally. It's
Did you
pretty
really?
exciting stuff. It has its rhythms that are out of this world, but that's for another time. We're going to wrap up here. We have about a minute left. Any last minute thought?
Just like I said, we've got Tartan Day coming up. We got the Parade of Lights. We've got Dunsmuir in Oakland.
Right.
That's around July, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then we got the Pleasanton Games, which is the big one.
Right.
That is the religion.
Right.
You know, it's one of the biggest games in North America.
Is that right? So that's where you could see it all.
Everybody should try to make that one.
And you were saying it's the games where they have the competitions, and these were the tests of strength and warriors.
It's Labor Day weekend every year.
Okay, Labor Day weekend. Well, I think that's going to be a wrap right now. Richard Brown, Chief Highland Warrior, and we're going to have Teague Seaton's going to be with us in a minute. We're going to take a quick break, strike the set. You're going to grab your weapons, and we're going to see a great.
We'll show you what we
do. Very exciting. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again. We'll do another one.
Good thing.
Yeah, Rusty King. We'll be back in a minute.
Seaton! Come on, let's roll! Right! Come on!
Folks, how exciting is that? This has got to be one of the most exciting events in our community television. I want to thank you both. We've got Richard Brown here, Chief Highland Warrior. We've got Teague Seaton. Thank you for your assistance. Great interviewing you. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Rusty. Thanks for having us.
I never want to get on your bad side. No. I'll tell you that right now. So thanks for being. You've been with King's Connection, Rusty King, Jewels of the Crown series. Good night.
Ah!